Shop Chat.
According to UrbanDictionary.com, instant classic means when a brand new tune blows everyone's mind because you just know it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I can't think of a better way to define our guests on this episode of Shop Chat. Would you please welcome our 2015 International Quartet champions, Kyle, Cole, Theo, and David, Instant Classic. Guys, welcome to the show.
I gotta get away from this place. Gotta go to a space where my heart can race. Gotta find me a brand new pace. I'm gonna leave this place without a trace. Gotta go, 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 go. Oh no. Let's take a ride. Let's take a ride. Oh me, oh my, what a night tonight. Alright, oh my vow. Whoever planned to motor west. Yeah, travel my way, take the highway. That's the best. That's the best.
Thanks for having us.
Well, let's just get started here. This is kind of a standard question for our audience. I'm always curious to know how each of the people in the quartet first finds out about Barbershop and gets involved in Barbershop. So, Kyle, why don't you start off for us tonight? Tell us a little bit about your backstory in Barbershop.
I can officially say that I was probably the youngest on this call to ever get exposed to Barbershop. I was at my first rehearsal at 6 days old. Because I was born on Tuesday and they had chorus rehearsals on Mondays, and there was no way that my dad was going to let that go by and not have me at the first rehearsal. In fact, he still considered possibly going to rehearsal the Monday night before, and I was born at 4 in the morning. So that obviously wasn't going to work out. But yeah, I started at a very young age, and I was at a lot of chorus rehearsals with my dad, and then he had a number of quartets, and I was always following him around and watching contest videos over and over once I figured out how the VCR worked, and I stopped putting peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in them. When I got past that point, I watched contest videos over and over and over because I thought it was the coolest thing to see my dad on the TV.
That's great. And tell us, Kyle, where was his chorus?
South Bend, Mishawaka chapter, which I'm still a member of. I joined that chapter when I was 10, actually. And that's South Bend, Mishawaka, Indiana, and North Central Indiana.
That's great. My first chapter was the Valparaiso chapter.
Okay.
I was living in Portage, just right down I-90.
Nice.
Yeah. But was relatively new when I moved away. But that's awesome. Cole, I would expect that your story has some similarities with Kyle's, but why don't you give us a lowdown on how you got into Barbershop?
Yeah, so I've been exposed to Barbershop just as long as Kyle, just as early. Not at 6, like his first rehearsal, but a little after that. But unlike Kyle, when Kyle got started, he was really into it. He really bought into the Barbershop style. He followed my dad's quartet classic ring around and knew their music. And this is at the age of 3, 4 years old. Knew all their choreography. He just had a blast with them and other quartets too. And anyway, Kyle's always really loved Barbershop, even from his first 6-day-old rehearsal. But I didn't buy into it as much, and a lot of people would ask me, it's like, whole family, your dad likes Barbershop, your mom likes Barbershop, your brother likes Barbershop. Why don't you like Barbershop? And I'm like, well, maybe it just give me some time. I don't know. Just wasn't buying in at first.
Right.
But after a while, sometime around like the age of 8 or 9, my brother and my mom and I were all going in to visit family in West Virginia. And on the way there, my brother and mothers incessantly listened to the Michigan Jakes For the Record and How Rhythm Was Born album, and they played them over and over and over and over again. And I said,
we especially love repeating 2 songs. This is something my mother passed on to me, is just repeating the same thing over and over. We played Hey Good Lookin' from How Rhythm Was Born and Dinah, especially after the last key change in Dinah.
Yes.
That was our favorite 2 things to play, and we would be like, That's awesome.
Rewind it.
Over and over.
She did that with Ambiance too on cassette. Remember that, Kyle? Anyway, so at the end of this, it's an 8-hour car drive to get there. And by about hour 6.5 or 7, after just saying, make it go away, make it stop, I start singing along. I'm like, you know what? This really isn't too bad. I've had ample time to learn enough notes to enjoy singing with it. And then from that point on, I was like, I want to learn barbershop. But yeah, that's where it all started. And then from there, it's all history. Like the next year, I was a member, and I've been a member ever since, which is like 20 years. So
I had never met anyone who would listen to barbershop as much in the car as Kyle, because I thought I was the only one. And Kyle, those are some of my favorite memories of whenever you would come and pick me up, or what we would be driving together in the early days. We would listen to barbershop the entire time and be singing along with it. Do you remember the entire
I remember
time?
us racing to see who could learn all 4 parts to every song on Vocal Spectrum 2. That's what I remember.
I also remember he's the master of the 10-second rewind. So he'll get through this one stupid song and he can't figure it out, and he'll rewind it 10 seconds over and over and over to the point where I'm like, Kyle, can we just listen to this song?
And that
He's
was
like,
before,
no, but I don't know what the baritone notes are.
That was before we had the little button that you could just hit and go back 10 seconds. So he's doing it, manually to get it. But they got to you, didn't they, Cole? They
did. I was bitten.
Well, very good. And then Theo, why don't we turn to you? What's your backstory in barbershop?
Yeah, I'm many years later after Kyle and Cole. I didn't find it until high school. So in fact, I really didn't even like singing until like 7th grade. And then I, did this after school choir, which, it was just so much fun. And so I kept doing choir in high school, and I met 4 other guys that kind of were into the a cappella scene. And so we had this 5-man a cappella group. Sorry, 5-boy a cappella group. We're kids. And then one of our beatboxer graduated, and then we're like, oh no, this is the end. We can't do anything with 4 parts. This sucks. And then then one of our members, his name was Wayne Pollard. He was like, well, why don't you come over to my house and we'll record, just for posterity's sake, and we'll just call it thing. So we went over to his house, and we started recording on, believe it or not, like a tape player, because that was still a thing back then. And excuse me. And so we recorded our little bit, and then it stopped, and then the tape kept playing, and then we heard this barbershop quartet. And Wayne's like, oh, turn it off. I'm so sorry. And we're like, no. What's that? What's that? It sounds really cool. And Wayne's like, I'm so sorry. That's my dad's dopey barbershop quartet. I'm really sorry. And I was like, actually sounds really cool. And Craig was like eavesdropping in the background, Craig Pollard, and he just kind of rushes in. He's like, oh, you guys think that's really cool? Let me show you some other stuff. And then he just got us all hyped up and everything. And so we're like, all right, yeah, let's try and be a barbershop quartet then. So, and then the rest is history. It was fall of 2003 that my high school quartet entered the Pioneer District Bush League contest, because I grew up in Michigan. Mm-hmm. And that was a jolly good time. And then we kept competing in the regular contest because we were too young to compete in the college contest. What was the youth contest back then, the college contest? And it had an age limit from the lower end as well. You had to be 17 or you had to be older.
Something like that. You had the upper teens, yeah.
Yeah, and we were 15 and 16. So finally, when we turned 17, the following year, we actually, and that's actually when I met Kyle. Kyle, so if you can follow this 6 degrees of separation or whatever. So Wayne and I went to school together. We were good buddies. Wayne's father, Craig, was into barbershop, and Craig sang in a quartet called Infinity, and the bass of that quartet was Scott Kitzmiller. And so they always met in, it wasn't Lansing, was it? Yeah, they met in Lansing for rehearsal. And long story short is that my high school quartet, eventually our bass moved away. And so we were missing a bass. And so Craig happened to be mentioning this to Scott. And Scott said, well, my son sings bass. Maybe he could fill in with this high school quartet. And so that's how Kyle and I met. It's how we became friends. We actually met at the Slamka Harmony Hideaway which was like a summer thing that was really, really fun that the Slamkus put on at Jack's Barn up in Michigan. But that's kind of how I got started, and the rest is history.
Okay, and so how far in Michigan were you from where the Kitzmillers are from, which is on sort of the Indiana-Michigan border?
I don't know how this is actually going to happen on the video, but I'm gonna do this. So I was here in like Farmington Hills,
Yeah.
and here's Indiana. Is it backwards? So this is right.
There you go.
Okay.
That's the one you want.
Here's Farmington Hills, and this is like Indiana, like
Right.
And Elkhart's kind of like right here.
Okay, I got
So
you.
and Lansing's kind of like right there. So
I got you. Very cool.
I think it was about 3 hours and 45 minutes from one side to the other, but we met in the middle.
I got you. Very good. And
Yep.
then last but not least, David, tell us about how you got into barbershop.
All right, so my journey actually starts in junior high school. So I was one of 3 boys in the Centerville Junior High School choir, and like the whole choir was very small to begin with, but there were 3 boys, and I was the tenor of the 3 boys, and every single day we would go into Mrs. Anderson's choir room, and we would be so excited to sing a major triad together and just, wring the snot out of that major triad for like 2 seconds before, we ran out of breath and got tired and everything. But anyway, my choir director took note of that, noticed that we were, enjoying harmony and stuff. And so when we got into high school, my freshman year of high school, the Indiana State School Music Association has a solo and ensemble contest, and barbershop's on there. So there were all kinds of just old barbershop arrangements that you were able to sing and just, compete for the gold medal there. So she knew about all of those barbershop arrangements. And so I think we sang an old Tom Gentry arrangement of Yesterday. That was my first barbershop quartet. We found there was another guy. He was actually a senior. So it was us 3 freshmen and a senior, weirdly, in this quartet. So that was my first experience. Then I went to college, and Kyle and I were in a classical music ensemble. It was just kind of like a small ensemble put together for like just somebody's choral conducting recital or something like that. And we were ringing fifths, as the bass and the tenor in this small ensemble. So Kyle took note of that, and we started singing tags. Just like in stairwells and whatnot, and at Ball State University. And he was in the goods at that time with Theo, and I wasn't going to get in the middle of that quartet or anything, but anytime that the goods was rehearsing, I tried to like get in there and just like, when they were done, like, hey, you guys want to sing anything like that. So that's kind of how I got started in the whole thing.
Great. And David, why don't we just keep going a little bit, because that'll kind of segue into how Instant Classic became a quartet. So you and Kyle ended up at Ball State together. And Theo, were you at Ball State at the same time?
No, I was at Anderson University, which is about 20 to 30 minutes down the road. In fact, if I can do a little side story here, back when AOL Instant Messenger was a thing, AIM, Kyle and I kept up because Kyle and I only sang together in that high school quartet for a year, and then he went down to college, and so we found a different bass. And then a year later, I went to college, and we were just kind of chatting, and he's like, "What are you looking at for schools?" And I was like, "Well, looking at University of Michigan up in Ann Arbor. I'm also looking at Anderson University."
To be clear, I'm pretty sure I said, you should go to Ball State because it has a great music education program.
Yes.
He's like, oh,
Yes.
no, I can't because, and then continue.
Yeah, because I'm looking at these two. And then he replies with all caps, "Dude, Anderson is 20 minutes from Ball State. You should totally go there." And I'm not saying that that's the only reason I made that decision, but it may have influenced my decision of where I went to college.
I see. Very
for
cool.
good or for ill. So.
Excellent. So then, David, you want to pick back up and how did you wreck their quartet, and then just put yourself right in there to take over?
No, so I don't exactly know anyway, the goods at one point decided they're gonna hang up and they're gonna be done, and they hadn't talked to me yet, but Theo and Kyle were like, okay, the goods were good, as it were, with that quartet for now. And they were saying, okay, we need a baritone. And David, we were ringing fifths with David over there. So I think Kyle and Theo were like, okay, well, David could be the baritone, but wait just a second,
Our baritone in the Goods
Yeah.
had graduated and moved down to Louisville. Is what
Okay,
happened. To be clear, why we had a vacancy on baritone.
gotcha.
That's right. Thank you for adding that, Kyle, because it's been a long time. I completely forgot about that. So that's right. So you were looking for a baritone, but then the tenor also was no longer able to sing with you guys. So then you needed a baritone and a tenor. And so it was like, okay, well, David can sing baritone, but Cole Kitzmiller could also sing baritone. But I'm going to let Theo tell the rest of this story because it's pretty
Okay.
No, I mean, I am never ashamed to say it. I was like, we're not having Cole in this quartet. Absolutely not. And, Kyle's like, why? Like, why?
I did my best sales job for my 16-year-old brother, but it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, he's so young, he doesn't care about Barbershop. Like, because
Right.
I just, like, the first time I had met Cole and he was wanting, I don't even think, Cole, I'm trying to remember if I was at that Harmony Hideaway that I know we met there for the first time, but I don't know if that was actually where we tried to sing that first tag. I think it was actually at the Pioneer District contest years later when we were just kind of hanging out in the lobby. And you're like, I want to sing a tag. And so we're like, okay, well, what do you want to sing? Well, I don't know. And then I was like, okay, well, how about this tag? And Cole's like, no, I don't like that one. Okay, how about this tag? And he's like, no, I don't like that one. And we went through like 5 tags, and he hated all of them. I was like, so then I just got real cheeky. I'm like, my name is Cole and I hate tags. And to this day, I think Cole still is a little bitter at me for that. But that was the image that was the image I had in my mind for Cole. I was like, Cole is just not going to be serious enough for this quartet. We need someone else. And so I had suggested kind of a mutual acquaintance that we all had through the Cardinal District, Mr. James Pennington, who we had seen in his college quartet. I don't remember their name. Do you remember the name, Kyle?
I don't think he had a college quartet, but he was singing.
No, he did. It was with
time.
it was with Will and Josh Hamilton and.
Oh, that's right.
And was it Hunter or yeah?
Yeah, Hunter.
Southern Comfort, Southern Hospitality.
No,
it was,
I can't remember the name, but I definitely know who you're talking about now.
Yeah. So I remember we had seen them in the college quartet, and I was like, I don't know why, but I was like, let's just spike him. Let's just get him in our quartet. So, because I don't think they were done at that point, but yeah, shows the quality guy I am. I'm like, yeah, no, forget Cole. Let's get James.
No, I think they were done, but 65 South was still together.
That's right. 65 South.
I had no idea Theo was so Machiavellian. This is like a whole new side of him that is coming. It's emerging now here on this ShopChat expose here. So
that's right.
Very good. So then help me try to piece together a memory I have. I feel like I know that I hung out with you guys at the 2011 Harmony University. So when did you guys become officially Instant Classic, the quartet?
It was
officially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
I was going to say we sang with James for a year, and it was clear that James was a lot further away from the rest of us, and he was busy trying to work on a journalism degree, and he was at the University of Kentucky following the basketball program, which of course is pretty prestigious. And
I would just point out
plus 65 South.
The winningest college. It's the winningest college basketball program.
They barely made the NIT that year, but
let's
anyway.
go on ahead here.
But anyway, he was busy doing that on top of 65 South, on top of a really large role in the leadership of the Kentucky Vocal Union. So all that together was like, I don't think this is kind of working out. So after the contest in Anaheim in 2009, we agreed that we would find a new baritone. And the three of us had agreed that we were going to sing with Cole at that point. So we went ahead and got together. So it was shortly after Anaheim in 2009 is when we got together as a quartet.
And were you all called Instant Classic at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So that was the four
Even
of
with
you.
James.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Very good. All right. It's all starting to come together. Now then, trace out for me, if you would, Cole, the steps that lead to, you guys won Cardinal District in 2011. Is that right? Fall of 2011. So what was the process to get from those collegiate quartets to that point?
Well, we had sung in the 2010 collegiate competition, where I think we got 10th with a 76, I want to say. And after that, we had actually separated for almost a year. Basically, immediately following that, we, Theo and Dave were going into student teaching, and they had just finished student teaching. They were trying to get jobs as music educators, and it just wasn't a good time for them. So that first year, trying to get settled into a job, there was the instant classic didn't happen. But we came back in the fall, and then we came back again in the spring, just like with our quartets and choruses. That it's funny, we separated as a quartet, but everyone else got their own quartets and sang in the next contest.
Right.
Therefore, because in 2011, Theo competed with what was their name?
On the Fritz.
Name there?
On the Fritz.
And then Dave had the Chris Bateson experience that just formed as this is just for fun. And then we got together in the, I want to say was it the spring of 2011? We were
singing tags in the spring of 2011 at the contest. And we're like, we should. But the backstory behind that was I joined Circle City Sound after I graduated and I moved to Indianapolis. I joined the chorus, and I was like, hey, Dave, you should drive from Richmond, Indiana, which is about an hour drive or so. And I was like, you should come every Monday night because it's awesome. And that eventually brought him in, and he sang baritone. And then Theo was student teaching, I think. You were doing the maternity leave.
Yep, in Crawfordsville.
Temporary position in Crawfordsville. And I was like, hey, Theo, you should come sing here. And then we started singing tags, the three of us, because Cole was still in high school. And we're like, we should maybe get back together now that we've kind of figured out what direction our lives are going in. And then we got together with Cole at the contest because otherwise he wasn't going to be available. And then we're like, yeah, we'll do this again. And then what happened in the summer of 2011 was the Ontario Harmony Brigade was having an event, and they hired Prestige.
That's right.
And Dave Parrott, the bass of Prestige, was not available because he had a college vocal group conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked me to sub, and then turned out that Nick Gordon also had that same conflict with the same group. So then he said, well, why don't you have Theo come in and sing baritone? Okay, sure. And then found out that Drew Ochoa's brother was getting married in Jamaica, I think it was.
Yeah.
And offered to fly him down, but he wasn't going to bail on this event. And I was like, man, you should go do that. That's something you should be part of. And then on top of it, Gordie Howe was missing out on a family vacation to do this gig. So one by one, we started adding pieces, and we replaced Prestige for this gig. And we got together and crammed 6 songs just to try and have a show to put together. And that kind of was the motion behind having a reason to get back together other than we should sing together. We actually had a gig because of this one by one kind of thing, taking over for Prestige at the Ontario Harmony Brigade.
And so you guys all then sort of ended up in the central Indiana-ish area, more or less, to where you could actually get together and get something going. So I wanted to skip ahead now and talk about your contest experience. I went back. I hope that the things that I looked up are accurate. It looks like your first international was 2012, and you finished 24th. Then in 2013, you finished 16th. I will note 1 spot behind a very mediocre comedy quartet. And then in 2014, you made the 10 and finished 8th place, 1 spot ahead of that very same mediocre comedy quartet. So I'm really curious. You guys won in 2015, but in 2014, I mean, you've been making this very nice climb, but you're still, just barely into the 10. And I'm really curious, Kyle, if you remember, were there any goals that you all had specifically for what you wanted to do in the 2015 cycle?
Well, one thing we definitely talked about was making sure that we knew what we wanted to sing early, and not waiting until January to get that, learned, figured out, all that kind of stuff. So I think that one of the big things we did that year was solidify, I think, 5 of our contest songs by like October. I think How Could I Ever Know was the last one. Is that right?
Gotcha.
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
I finished How Could I Ever Know at Harmony Explosion. So
Okay, well, maybe that wasn't it then.
Was it Started Something Big?
I don't remember. No, that one we had in the fall. But the other thing that happened was, for those that don't know Scott Kitzmiller, our dad, he is always going to school, is the way he puts it, on other groups, and trying to study and figure out what's going right, or what he can see that they're doing that may not be working, but can maybe figure out an alternative route of preparation. And in 2014, after we got 8th, we were waiting to go sing at one of the hospitality rooms, and he took us into the hallway and he's like, all right, I'm going to teach you about this vowel chart right now. We're like, Dad, we got done competing in the finals for the first time tonight. I don't want to do this. I just want to go sing for people. And he's like, no, you need to start now. I'm like, okay, we'll do your exercises. Fine.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we had a few chords that rang in a different way than it would have, because another thing philosophically for us was, don't try and learn new things the week or even the month before a contest. Just solidify what you already know.
I want to hit the pause
any of this kind of stuff was not going to be introduced until after the contest was over.
Right. Let me hit the pause for just a second, because I want to circle back to the lead in to that contest. But this, I think, is a good point. You had mentioned one of the songs, How Could I Ever Know? And Theo, I wanted to ask you more about these songs. I think that while those of us who are fans of you guys love all that you do, I think one of your hallmarks as a quartet are these amazing ballads that are drawn from material that's been on Broadway. And I wanted to ask you specifically about I Won't Send Roses, Till I Hear You Sing, and How Could I Ever Know. Could you talk a little bit about where those 3 songs came from, and also how you all gravitated to that as a staple of what Instant Classic is about?
Sure. So I Won't Send Roses was actually my very first commissioned arrangement ever.
I won't send roses suit you, so I won't send roses suit
Ever. That was back in 2008. And Frank the Dog from Mid-Atlantic District, Tom Halley reached out to me and just took a chance on me and just said, hey, we've stumbled upon your crappy website. And because I had like a Vistaprint website that I just pulled like a bunch of stock photos. I was like, music, hey. and so they're like, yeah, and so Tom has an amazing ear for just great songs. And so he suggested I Won't Send Roses for Frank the Dog. And so I listened to it. I'm like, this is I'd always been a fan of musical theater, but I was like, I had no idea that it had this kind of depth. And I think it was, I believe it was Mel Torme he sent me this recording, and I was like, oh my gosh, this song is awesome. So, I had done it for him, and I did the learning track for it as well. And then, fast forward, I don't know, 3-4 years, and the quartet were like rehearsing and everything. And I remember playing them this track, and we get to the, just turn and go, and everything. And they all went, that chord is awesome. We should sing this one. Like, I remember vividly being in Scott's basement and playing in that. And they're like, we should probably do that one. I was like, Well, it is like 3 or 4 years later. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
exclusive anymore. So
Right.
so we picked it up, and that was even though it wasn't ours, that was one of the first songs I think that kind of felt like ours, because it may have been, no, although Spend My Life was first, wasn't it? I can't remember which one we picked up first. Do you, Kyle?
Spend My Life with You we did in the 2012 contest,
Yeah.
and nobody remembers it. It was amazing because I was like, oh, this is going to be so cool. Let's try R&B in a contest, and we'll see if we
Yeah.
get docked any points. We didn't, but it was just funny because like, oh, that was nice. And then we didn't do it in 2013. Then we did it in 2014. Like, where did that song come from? It's like you just weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
That's great. Now,
Well,
Theo,
yeah.
before you go on to the other two I asked about, I wanted to just say that the first time I heard you all sing I Won't Send Roses, I thought Theo is such a nice guy that when I think about what the guy in this song is saying, it's hard to compute. But having heard about some of the machinations that you've been involved with in these quartets, I can see how that could work. But let me just ask you to please continue on now and talk about those other songs.
Jeez, my gosh, you're not wrong. Well, so yeah, and then Till I Hear You Sing came along. So that comes from Love Never Dies, which is many people don't know about this, but it's the sequel to the Phantom of the Opera.
Gotcha.
And it's okay that you don't know about it because many critics say it's not as good. But I remember listening to that, and I fell in love with this Broadway actor, Ramin Karimloo, and I mean, he's just incredible. So I'm listening because I've never seen the musical, and I think it was, I don't know, 2012, 13, and I'm just kind of listening to it, and then he hits the end, like, and I'm just listening, I'm like, this is really interesting, and then he goes, till I hear you sing once more. I'm like, it's a post.
Yeah.
Till I hear you sing
Once more.
Hear you sing once more.
And then it literally was that moment that I was like, this is a post, and he's holding it forever. This could be a Barbershop song. Like, it wasn't like, this got me so emotional. I was like,
Right.
it's a post. And that was the spark. Now, obviously, once I started diving into it, I'm like, okay, this is a really great song. But, and then I pitched it to the quartet, and they're like, yeah, let's sing it. So I think the first time we sang that, was it 2014, I believe? Because I think we
sang it in 13.
You may be right.
I
Anywho,
think
but
it was Guilty and Till I Hear You Singing the Semis.
yes, it was. You're right. And then 14, we sang it in the opening set, the quarterfinals. Yeah. So that's kind of how that one got started. And then How Could I Ever Know it's a very, very near and dear to my heart. I had heard that back in my Anderson days. It's from the musical The Secret Garden, which is just a musical that I love.
How could I know I would hurt you so? You were the one I was born.
It's just got such rich just harmonies, melodies, message, story, everything. It's got everything. And I remember in particular, we did like an opera review, or like, it wasn't a full-fledged like performance, and I remember two of my really good friends, Debbie Feitz and Jeremy Mang, they sang this duet from The Secret Garden. And they started with Where in the World, which is right before it, and then leading into How Could I Ever Know. And I just remember hearing it, and that was at a time in my life that I was really struggling with a difficult, just relationship breakup. And as trivial as it seems now, it was a really difficult time. I remember hearing that, and it really had a healing effect on me. And so every time I hear that song, I just am brought back to that kind of moment of healing. Even though it is a really sad song, all of them are really sad songs, but and so I was like, you know what, I think I would love to hear this in a quartet or like in Barbershop.
Yeah.
And so I think it was 2014 that I finally just bit the bullet, because I loved the song for years. And I was like, I think we were looking for music. I was like, this might be a really good one. And so I arranged it and then pitched it to the guys, and the guys are like, if you feel strongly about it, let's go for it. So that one really was the emotional content for me. I was like, this is just such an amazing song. And I don't remember a lot of people who have done, stuff from Secret Garden. So
Right. It's an extraordinary song. And I sent a YouTube clip of you guys seeing it a few years ago to a friend of mine who suddenly lost her husband very unexpectedly. And it's a peculiar thing that it's a song that is almost remorselessly sad and heartbreaking, but in a way, it's very healing because it acknowledges there's a reason to feel that hurt when that time comes,
Yeah.
and it's such a fantastic song. Well, one episode is certainly not enough for a quartet that has classic in its name. So we hope you enjoy part 2 of our conversation with Instant Classic. This thing called I can't handle it. This thing called get round it when I ain't ready. Crazy little thing called love. This thing called